Welcome, everybody, to the Gamers of the Eastern Fringe Podcast, a podcast about enjoying your hobby. We're part of the Gamers of the Eastern Fringe Network, which is a new network based out of Eastern Pennsylvania, where we're trying to bring a little bit more to our Warhammer 40K community. Even as we begin this podcast, though, there are certainly many of you reaching out saying you want to do more than just 40K. There's a great Age of Sigmar community, Star Wars, Marvel Crisis Protocol, and so much more. And so while this particular podcast is beginning as a 40K podcast, don't be surprised if you see a whole lot more coming out of the network in the coming weeks, months, and even longer than that as you guys engage with us. This is also where we're going to see a lot of other things. In addition to this podcast, you can, of course, connect with us in a lot of ways. We do have a Facebook page, a Discord channel, as well as a YouTube channel as well, and links for all that are going to be found in the episode description.
So this podcast, primarily, we're going to be covering a few topics here. You're going to be able to check in with us and our hobby projects, as well as us following up with everyone listening at home. We're going to be doing some tips and tricks about the hobby, anything that we might be able to talk about, not necessarily with you being able to see us, but something that we can work through with you. We're going to cover local events in the area, stuff going on at Cloud City, Warhammer Allentown, and over at the Portal. You're also going to be able to submit some lists to review with us. We'll take a glance over those, see if we can find anything fun for you to slot into those. Maybe you're missing some anti-tank, maybe you're missing some anti-infantry, maybe you just look for something super fun that you want to sneak in there. We'll definitely help you out with that.
Excellent. As like we talked about, there's also going to be a way via our Facebook page and Discord group every time before we drop an episode, which our frequency is going to be about once a month. We might increase that as the as all of you, let us know that you're enjoying the content. We might try and bump that up. But both Matt and I are folks, we got full-time jobs and families. And so it is not our primary source of income to be here with all of you. And so right now we're able to make the commitment to once a month. But certainly if there is interest, we are happy to bump that up. But as we were saying, we'll also have a spot in each episode for listener questions. So in addition to giving a list to review and analyze and offer up, not our professional criticism, obviously, but just as someone who can look from the outside and ask that question, push that list a little bit further down the way. We'll also take listener questions. So if you want to hear our take about the latest, the latest meta that's hit the scene, if you want us to hear about a particular unit or what we like lore-wise, or, what do we bring to tournaments that keep us sharp and on point, we're going to have opportunities before each episode, just a reminder of to get those questions in. We'll put them in a pool and get to as many as we can.
And we're also going to take some special episodes down the line to feature faction focuses. If you submit a question to us about a particular faction, we see some special interest, maybe a lot of questions about one faction in particular. We'll lean really hard into that, and we'll go in behind the lore and some of our favorite units in that faction and make sure we cover all the bases on that before you take the dive into starting that faction for yourself.
Absolutely. So, again, if there's anything you want to particularly hear about, listeners, we would love to hear it. Now, that was the quick breakdown of what you're going to hear each episode. Again, you're going to hear us just doing a little check-in as co-hosts together, what we've been up to in the hobby. And then, again, of course, our, keeping it fun, because that is the focus of this particular podcast. How to continue to enjoy your hobby, because so many of us can struggle at times with burnout. We just lose that motivation. Many of us, as a result of the pandemic, when events weren't happening and we couldn't really gather, really struggled with that. And others of us thrived because we just, dove into painting and building and converting and just had a grand old time because we had a backlog. Not that any of us would have a pile of shame or anything to look at, but yeah.
So this is kind of where we're going to be. I've never heard of a pile of shame before in my life.
Absolutely. So you've heard a little bit about what each episode is going to be about. But of course, now you got to ask yourself, well, who in the world are Matt and Ricky? And why should I listen to them? So I'm going to turn things over to Matt to just explain a little bit about who he is and where he's at in 40K. Matt, go ahead.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, everybody. My name is Matt, and I've been playing Warhammer 40K on and off since 2012. I got into the hobby as a result of seeing the artwork and the pictures of the minis in the 4th and 5th edition, rule books. What really caught my eye back in the day. I was maybe 12 years old at the time. The freshly resculpted Tyranid Carnifex in the 4th edition rulebook. Absolutely gorgeous mini. They still use the same sculpt today. Definitely got me into the hobby, and my first faction back then was Tyranids. Since then, I've been playing on and off. I really got back into the hobby at the start of 8th edition. I primarily play Tau and Drukhari, very lucky for me here at the start of 9th edition, but I also have a pretty good collection of Necrons and Harlequins to play with as well, especially now that those Harlequins can join my Drukhari in a patrol detachment. I'm not too into any of the other IPs quite yet, but I'm starting to look at AOS and especially Necromunda for some games going forward here. Can't wait to break into those parts of the hobby.
That's right. Yeah, I was going to say I can vouch that my co-host Matt certainly was not meta-chasing when he added Tau and Drukhari. Those have been things he's been struggling with for editions now. You've heard he's been in the hobby since 4th or 5th edition. So, he's in a golden age for those two armies.
Thriving. Absolutely thriving.
I'm telling you, it's a good time to be a Tau and Drukhari player. All right, folks. Again, my name is Ricky. It's good to be with you all. So I have been enjoying the hobby since late 2017 into early 2018. So it was right at the tail end of 7th edition as they were breaking out and beginning 8th edition. So my wife and I were just getting ready to welcome our first child into the world. And so naturally, I decided it's the best time to pick up a very expensive, time-consuming hobby that takes you away from the family on Saturdays and Sundays, especially as one who works the weekends as part of my full-time job. But in any case, that is when I decided to get into it. So in addition to some sparse video game and trading card games, again, I focus on Warhammer 40k. I did have an ironic start to the hobby, though. So my first introduction to anything 40k came when my brother and I would go to the local comic and gaming store in our local mall. So we would go to the Granite Run Mall and see this massive display case in the front of Showcase Comics, and there was this huge, gigantic robot. I mean, huge by, early teenager me, at least. And I had no clue that that thing had rules or that you had to assemble it. I figured it was just something somebody got out of a box somewhere like you would any toy at the time. But I thought it was a neat display case, never paid any mind. After all, we were there to pick up comics, Magic the Gathering cards, and Pokemon cards. I wasn't thinking there was something called Warhammer 40,000 in those days with anything. But suffice to say, now I know that model as a Warhound Titan, and it's certainly just as big even now, the official thing. And so, we would see these folks every once in a while in the store when we came on weekends, playing this game on some tables in the back of the store. But ironically, I never saw the game played. Never saw a dice roll, a model moved. All I saw from these guys was arguing about rules. And so my brother and I would see this and wonder, okay, what are they doing? It's like we argued about video games. We'd argue about Halo and who missed the shot. But I never saw any game being played. So my brother and I kind of humorously vowed we would never turn into those gamers. And wouldn't you know, you have to be careful about never using the word never. Because nowadays we sit around a table in my basement and argue about rules interactions. So it kind of came full circle, decades later, but we certainly have really enjoyed our experience in Warhammer 40,000. In terms of the factions that I like to play, when I began, I started with Imperial Guard, now known as Astra Militarum, and then very much transitioned real hard into Orcs. I had a very good buddy of mine who fielded those early questions and helped me get into it, and took a deep dive into that. So I enjoy my greenskins, who like a good scrap just as much as anybody else. They seem to be having a good time, win, lose, or draw, which is kind of my passion in this hobby, is having a good time. Winning is fun, but it is a random dice roll game, so I certainly enjoy having a good time, and my orcs like having a good time, whether they're beating you or getting beat up. They just like a good scrap, and so that's a little bit about me. The other thing of note is that in terms of keeping the hobby fun, I mentioned already that, at least have one kid. We just welcomed our second back at the end of December. And so hobby progress and all that is taking a bit of a different turn, because the days of being able just to kiss the wife goodnight and go down to the hobby desk for a couple hours and eat into my own sleeping time are kind of gone because kids can wake up at any hour, and sleep fatigue is a real thing. So you'll be hearing that in terms of a perspective of like, a dad in 40K, and how that works, kind of imagining all those responsibilities at this point.
Thanks for that lovely introduction, Ricky. We'll get moving on to our next section here. Don't have too much for you today, as it's our pilot episode, but I figure we'll do a little bit. For our first segment, of keeping the hobby fun, we are gonna have a 5 tips for your next competitive game of 40K in under 3 hours. From one of our correspondents, in Gamers of the Eastern Fringe, Robbie Vega.
Hello gamers, today we're exploring 5 ways to help you prepare to play competitively or in a tournament for 40K. The main thing we're going to focus on today is how to play a game in under 3 hours. Let's jump in. So what's really important as you are looking to play competitively is to first do what it takes to figure out how to play a game in under 3 hours. Most tournaments will give you between 2.5 and 3 hours per round, and it's really no fun for your opponent or yourself to only get through a couple turns. When I was running tournaments and playing tournaments earlier in the edition, that was one of the biggest complaints. It's like, oh, we only ever got to turn 2, only got to turn 3. Well, that's not really a game. If you know your rules, if you know your army, and you play really well, you should be able to get a game done in under 3 hours. So let's go over 5 areas that you can do to prepare to play under 3 hours if that's an opportunity for you. The first step really is to make your army as easy to play as possible. So one thing to do is to start with an elite list, regardless of if it's competitive or not. I know it seems counterintuitive to start playing competitively by playing a non-competitive list, but the truth is you can't really compete until you're good enough at the game and you know your army well enough that you can play a shorter game. So build a more elite list, especially with the same unit duplicated, so that you only have to learn a small subset of rules and you can really streamline how that game goes. When I'm playing my Tau, especially with the new codex, I try to keep it simple. So the very first list I played with was a Devilfish Fire Warrior spam list, mainly because having 6 Devilfish and really a couple copies of the same Fire Warrior and Breacher unit allowed me to focus on those units instead of worrying about the thick layers between like playing Crisis Suits and other units that require a little bit more knowledge around the rules. The second thing you want to do is really analyze your list for how many layers of rules you actually need to know. I mentioned Crisis Suits in the case of Tau, but really there are some units that, along with stratagems, warlord traits, and relics, they've become really complex to play, and you have to know a lot of rules that make them kind of not niche, but really when you're playing them, you have to be constantly vigilant on which stratagems and how to use them in a game. Otherwise, they're not as effective. So either avoid lists and units that require a lot of bookkeeping and a lot of brain power to run early on, or be willing to play them and forget some of those rules, because you're not going to have time in a 3-hour game to open up your codex and look for that one stratagem that you only use once in a tournament but is really key here. So the goal here is to play a game in 3 hours, not necessarily to win. You can win later when you know your army a little bit better. Another thing I do before every tournament, whether I'm newer to the game or I've been playing for a while, is I always have a cheat sheet. There's always rules that you're going to forget or things that only come up once in a blue moon that you really want to play accurately, that you want to know well. So typically I'll have a sheet of paper, usually printed because I'll type it on my computer, that has a list of every single possible stratagem that I can use. So that allows me to take out all of the stratagems that I will not even need to bother with. That's a really great advantage because now I'm sifting through maybe a dozen stratagems instead of 20 or so. Another thing I'll do is I'll include the page number on that list, so if I did need to pull it up to show my opponent, they're not looking at my notes on the stratagem, they can look at the actual verbiage in the codex. One of the things I like to do on top of that is that I'll actually organize all the stratagems by phase. That way, if I'm, let's say, in the shooting phase, I can pull up all my stratagems just for the shooting phase. That really allows me to filter out all the extra noise, all the extra strats that I don't need. I've found that just typing up the sheet helps me learn the stratagems, but even organizing it by which phase and which turn allows me to learn it better and become more effective at playing the game. Once again, the goal here is not even to win yet. I know playing competitively, that's usually the typical thought, but a tournament is really 3 to 5, 3 to 6 really, unless you're really great at a GT and you go to the top 8. You're playing 3 to 6 fun games with a bunch of other people who love the hobby as much as you do. So whether you win or lose doesn't really matter. You have to have goals in mind of what you want to accomplish that are realistic and have a plan to make that happen. So early on, my goal is always to play the game in under 3 hours before anything else, because that's where the fun of tournament play really starts. It's just being able to play the whole game. When I do play at a tournament or even in practice games, I really try to play from memory. This is something that is a challenge because we are competitive people, right? We like to win. We also don't want to cheat, especially in friendly games. When I'm preparing for a tournament, I will tell my opponent, because my opponents are usually my friends or my local playing group. I'll be like, listen, this is a new list. I'm going to goof up some rules, but I'd rather play fast than play accurate. If there's something you see me do that you question or you don't think it works that way, please let me know and we'll look it up. Otherwise, my goal is really just to have a fun game and really just play it to the end. And then I will follow up, read through my rules again after the game, and I'll usually then email my opponent, be like, hey, this is what I goofed up. This is where I made some mistakes. I cheated, quote unquote, here and there. I say cheated as a joke because, once again, I wasn't purposefully cheating. What I was trying to do is play the game more from memory, or how I believed it worked at the time. Remember, this is outside of playing in a tournament. This is playing in a friendly game. So I'll go ahead and I will do that. And usually my friends are cool with that. We always miss stuff in our friendly games because we're joking around anyway and half paying attention. But it's no big deal because in the spirit of the game, we're just having fun. Now, at a tournament, of course, you need to be more accurate with your rules. There is an expectation with your opponent on the other side that you are playing your army accurately. So at that point, really, if you don't know a rule, default to what you know, if that makes sense. So if there's a stratagem that you believe works a certain way, but you're not really 100% sure, you are better off not playing that stratagem than taking the time to look it up. Once again, you're preparing to play competitively. You aren't expected to be a competitive player turn one. So that's my recommendation. Will it cost you games in the short run? Sure, but in the long run, you'll be a better player for it because you are learning through your play instead of trying to learn and do everything at once, which is way too much for anyone to handle in a game this complex as 40K. The last tip I give you for playing under 3 hours, which, I mean, there's many more tips than these, but this is kind of an area to start, is actually with your dice. This is an interesting thing. This is starting to get a little bit more advanced. When I go to a tournament, I bring usually 20 dice. And every time, if you watch my side of the table, you'll see me group them into 2 groups of 6 and 2 groups of 4. That's because oftentimes the most common dice I roll are either 20 dice or 12 or some combination of it. So by having these grouped up into 6s and 4s, I'm able to quickly grab the amount of dice I need without having to count them out each time. It takes a bit of effort, but it goes along with what we started talking about earlier in if you're cutting time and all the other stuff you're skipping and doing, it gives you time to actually manage the game. And managing the game includes having your dice ready, being ready when your opponent needs you to roll, and not hunting the table for dice or counting. As you get better and faster at these steps, you can start to spend more energy into actually trying to win the game. But you can't try to win the game until you can actually play the game. And that's where I think a lot of early competitive players get into trouble, is they walk into a tournament trying to do everything at the same time and they get frustrated, right? They forget some rules or they take so long to play that they don't finish a game. And if they had finished the game, they would have won the game because it is a 5-turn game. But instead, they got to turn 3 and unfortunately, not every army can win in 3 turns, especially if you're playing to win in 5. And even if you do win, sometimes it feels kind of cheap because you didn't get to those final turns. You can also consider using colored dice. For example, I mentioned grouping my 20 into groups of 2 sets of 4 and 2 sets of 6. That we have 10 dice, 12, 8, etc. to quickly pull from. But another thing you can do is use colored dice to make this a little easier. When I was playing Genestealer Cult, I was rolling a lot of dice. And that was a problem because that army takes forever to play. Now with the new codex, it's not as long to play, but it's still a pretty complex army to play. This was more in 8th edition when I got into Genestealer Cult. And so what I did was I brought a red solo cup. Insert jokes in the comments, please. And so what I would do is I would dump the sets of dice. So I had 3 cups, one with I think it was 20, one with 10, and one with 6, I believe were the denominations I did. And then I would mix the cups of dice into each other to get the quantity I needed. Once again, doing the math, and this is from memory, so I don't remember the exact number, doing the math for how much dice you will need more often and the different combinations can really help you. I don't mean to spend so much time on dice. You really want to hear how to play faster, and really, I'm just going to re-emphasize the 5 steps we said to go here, right? It's start with building an elite army. Less models, less rules, the better off you will be. You can worry more about playing the game and using a limited set of rules instead of complicating what you are trying to do. Definitely use a cheat sheet with the main rules you use. Typically, if I don't have an answer right away to a rule, if I'm looking for something, I just skip it and say, screw it, I'm just going to do it without and see how the game goes. Even if that stratagem might have won me the game or that rule might have made me better, it's my fault for not knowing it. The goal here is to finish a game and have a great time. Now, if it's a rule that obviously is going to impact the other player and actually might help you win versus the other player win, then definitely take the time to look it up. But you'll find as you continue to fast play, you will have more time to actually look up those rules, and then you can start spending some of that time looking up those rules in future games. I mentioned avoiding layers of rules when I talked about building elite army, but don't forget to play from memory. You should memorize as much of your rules as much as possible. I know that's not always easy to do, but you know what? In the end, you will remember more if you test yourself and force yourself to play from memory than if you constantly look everything up. So that's kind of some quick tricks that you can use to play your game in under 3 hours. Seems really lame, but honestly, it's helped me become successful as a competitive player and will help you as well. If you have any questions or any other tricks, please let us know. You can jump to our Discord or jump to our Facebook group or comment below. Hey all, thank you so much. Make it a great day.
That's right, folks. Again, want to be very thankful to Robbie. He put this together for us. So in addition to anything that we'll say about keeping the hobby fun, we'll also, again, be using some of the fellow gamers of the Eastern Fringe members to offer up different things, whether that's interviews, whether it's tips like this, conversion things, just other things to offer a nice variety as we engage this hobby, because it's exactly that. For some, the hobby is simply the building and painting. They just get all their enjoyment and kicks out of that. So for those of you out there, we're not going to forget about you as we talk about list and competitiveness. Each of these keeping the hobby fun segments will feature a variety of things. But I hope you did learn something fun from Robbie's little video. And we're going to move on to our next segment, which is just inviting you to submit some list for review and analysis. Again, both Matt and I are not professional 40K players. We don't make our living by going to tournaments and offering up coaching services. There are plenty of folks out there in the community that do offer that and do feature that. But we're coming to you as folks that, are enjoying the hobby, enjoying what we do, even if we do take it seriously at some points. So in the future episodes, again, please feel free to reach out to us via Facebook, via the Discord channel, and, submit to us a list you want reviewed. Let us know what you're looking for. If you're looking to, optimize it for competitive play, great. If you're more looking at it as an appreciation piece of here's a super fluffy, enjoyable list about Crimson Fist that, matches their great lore, tell us so that we're not really off base with our analysis and comments. So again, use Facebook, use Discord to reach out to us and send us your list for reviews in future episodes.
Yeah, definitely. Can't wait to get a look at everybody's lists. I know we've got a big variety. If you submit lists, maybe not for 40K, I will do my best, and I know Ricky will do his best as well. We'll do a little
Absolutely.
research up on what you submit to us so that when you give two 40K players your Age of Sigmar Daughters of Cain list and you say, how can I make this better, or how can I make this more fluffy, we don't sit here and scratch our heads. We'll make sure to do the research that you need us to do so that we can give you our honest opinions back about that.
Absolutely. And as Matt already said, while both of us are into Warhammer 40,000 in a big way, we are both AOS curious. And so I know for my part, I'm looking at some Ossiarch Bone Reapers, kind of going away from my greenskins, even though, it's tempting to run greenskins in two different systems, but I'm getting a little tired of Horde armies. I got enough of them with Guard and Orcs. It's time to go something a little different. Which does lead us into our last kind of thing. This is also the section where we would be doing your listener questions. So separate from the list reviews, this is also where, again, if you have questions that you would like to ask us, if there's things you want to know about us a bit more as your host, or about the game, the lore, or just, what do we like to do for fun? How do we hobby? Do we listen to music, or do we take, silence when we can get it? Feel free to drop any and all of your listener questions. We would be happy to read them off as we record.
Definitely. We're really, really excited to get this podcast together for you guys. It's something that's been on the minds of the gamers of the Eastern Fringe team for a few months now as we've started kind of kickstarting the community again. We really, really cannot wait to make this content for all of you, and I know our other correspondents here at the Gamers team are very excited to produce their content for you as well.
Absolutely. So that about wraps it, guys. Again, this is kind of our pilot episode, so if it does seem a little light and short today, sometimes short and sweet is good versus dragging it out unnecessarily. Both Matt and I are trying to make sure it is good, digestible content and not, us droning on and on and on and on forever. We can get talking, and we will, so hang tight if you're looking for more next time. Don't worry, another episode is coming quick. Which does lead me to this. As we were doing the pre-show, Matt, you happen to have spotted something out in the wilds. A new codex got leaked. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yes, so I got woken up this morning to a group chat of mine absolutely exploding. It looks like today, the morning of March 15th, 2022, the upcoming Tyranids Codex leaked in its entirety on Reddit. The community is abuzz with all of the new rules coming their way, and I got my chance to take a quick peek through it, and it's looking pretty spicy.
All right. Was it Cat Codex yet again that dropped it, or did a different animal decide to leak this one?
I did not see which animal leaked this codex. It would be interesting if Cat Codex got away with two within 2 months of each other.
Well, maybe he went to his correspondent goldfish, codex.
Definitely.
Maybe the fish got a hold of it this time. But yeah, folks, obviously, if you want to check that out, it looks like it has been the official codex leaked out in the wild. So obviously, Tyranids have been really wrecking it at the local tournament scenes with their Crusher Stampede and other things alike. So it's been highly anticipated. This new codex is going to amp it up a little further and pull some really janky stuff down too. I know none of us really love seeing 18 Hive Guard across the table because we know exactly what they're going to do, and they're going to have a million strats. Let them reroll everything, reroll wounding everything, shoot twice, and just things that make you want to play it again and again.
Yeah, speaking on Hive Guard really quick, one thing I did notice is their weapon did take a big nerf, and they moved from the elite slot to the heavy support slot, so they're fighting with other big units like the Carnifex and the Tyrannifex now for table space.
Nice. Yeah, sometimes that nerf bat kind of hurts pretty hard. My poor orcs took that hit a while back, and I'm still kind of mourning for my pirate freebooters. They love doing what they do, but I'll shed my tears another day.
We'll make sure that we can do a good list analysis for you on those so that you can get your grief out.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's it about for our first episode wrap up. You've heard our pilot. Again, we're going to be offered a new episode at least each month. A little bit more if Matt and I can get our schedules to work out and bring something new and fresh to you. Which just leads us with the last algorithm stuff. You hear it on every podcast and YouTube video you watch, but it certainly does go a long way. That's why every place has it. But please do find us on Facebook and Discord. Join the groups. There is no paywall to stop you from entering either of those. We are a free and open group on both of those platforms, so please join us. There's some great discussion all the way around on all of those, and other members of our gamers team are putting up posts and different comments on each of those, so please check it out. We also do have a gamers YouTube page, which is going to get more and more content as it comes out from other folks other than just myself and Matt. So as always, please leave 5-star reviews for the podcast. That helps us get to a larger network of people that can also then get linked up with us and help out. On the YouTube side, of course, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, so we can grow that channel all the more as well. And Matt, am I missing anything else that we should talk about before we say goodbye to our listeners?
No, just make sure that you get this podcast to the ears of everybody who plays your favorite hobby in the Eastern Fringe community, and we'll try to grow this community bigger and bigger every month.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening in to our pilot episode of the Gamers of the Eastern Fringe podcast. We look forward to seeing you soon, and as always, remember to enjoy your hobby.
Have a great day, everybody.